Okay, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about polygonal modeling in Maya. And last class we talked a little bit about sort of introductory concepts of the workspace. You know, we talked about the viewports here, of like making them sort of bigger and smaller by pressing space, navigation by pressing Alt or Option on your 3-button mouse, and the third button, all it really is just the wheel. So you guys should be pretty familiar with that. We also talked a little bit about organization and things in the hierarchy, which is kind of like the sort of an inventory window, and maybe like a you know, if you guys are familiar with After Effects, it's kind of like a project window, if you will. For most of the stuff, the basic primitives that we were creating last time here, we were doing just creating shapes with this thing here. This is poly modeling. So you see most of the things we're creating over here. And in the last class here, some of you guys may have sort of stumbled on some of the things we're going to be talking about here. And I specifically told you guys not to touch those at that point, because we're going to be going into them in more depth today. So here, just as sort of a little bit of a revision here, you know, if this was the first time you've ever started Maya here, then when you create something, just anything here, you can what I like to do here is, you know, if we're just going to be modeling, meaning like we're only worried about the physical, you know, just creating this physical object here without having to move it or anything, then here in modeling, that's going to expose a specific set of commands up here. And you can see as you change this stuff, it changes here. And so there's a ton of functions that Maya has, and this is just its kind of way of organizing that stuff. So in addition here, you have the shelves, which are kind of like our way of organizing our tools, much like a shelf that you might have in, say, I don't know, a workshop or something like that, or a garage or something. You know, you put your tools in different spots. Same thing here. So this poly modeling tool shelf, it has to do specifically with the things related to polygon modeling. Over here, you're going to see the area here for the layout organization. So I think by default, you probably have something like this, and you probably don't even have the viewport here. So what you can start doing here is, you know, I guess if I press space now, yeah, it's going to divide it up, because I think maybe I've laid that out. I'm not sure exactly how it is by default, but my point here is like, I think by default, it just starts you on this big viewport here, like this. And if I hit these little squares here with the 4 you know, divisions here, you get this arrangement here, which is going to be really, really helpful for what we're doing today. And so at any point here, if I want to make these things bigger or smaller, you can just tap spacebar and jump into it. And I'm just hovering the mouse over and just jumping in and out of those viewports here. And that's much different than holding the mouse over, or, I'm sorry, the space bar. I'm sorry, I don't know if I said space bar or mouse, but what I mean here is, like, if you tap the space bar, you can make that viewport bigger or smaller. Now, this guy down here, this is what you call the viewport. Any of these things here, you can also find under Windows. And you know, in my case here, I'm looking for this thing, which is called the outliner, which is that like inventory list here. You know, so let's get into modeling. And what I'm going to start with here is I'm just going to make a cube, right? And if this is the first time you've ever started Maya, I'm just going to press this button here, and there you go. It just comes in to the what you call the origin, right? And that's the point where these lines, they meet at the center here. So you have your X, Y, and Z axes, and they all intersect here at the middle here. And that's like the world sort of 0 position. So 0 on each axis here is what you call the origin. And that's important. That's a really important concept. Like the thing we did for homework in the last class here that is all about sort of working with 3D space. So you guys got to see like, well, what it means when you move something like, you know, 3 units out or whatever. So here, for example, if I were to move this, say, you know, 3 units here, all I did was to just enter. This is the channel box, by the way. So if I click an object here, this is the object mode, and you'll see that I've got this little icon here that this is called the channel box, and it looks like a little stack of papers or diamonds or something. These things here are sort of important. We're going to be talking more about that as we go on. But I think in the last class we talked about this guy, which is the channel box. We talked about that pretty extensively here. And then we talked about a little bit about the attribute editor, where you're going to see the nodes that are on your object here. So by nodes, I mean like, you know, just the things that contribute to the object's appearance or to its behavior here. So, you know, so here, this is a cube, but we can modify like the specifics of you know, of how this cube is built with this polycube node here. So for example, if I wanted more divisions here in this, we could just bump that up a little bit here. We're going to be talking more about that later here. And that is also found here under the input. So you can see here, I've still, when I just created this object here, I do have a setting to determine like how, you know, how big I want this this cube to be here. And I can just go in and highlight the word and then just click with my middle mouse button, drag with the middle mouse button, and I can rearrange the size of these, you know, these things here. So here, you know, let's say I've got a thing that's like 5. You know what? Let's just take it back to 1. There we go. And then I'm going to just zero this out here. So I can change everything about this cube here with these numbers here. Now, what I showed you guys last class here that I kind of like here is this little setting under the Create menu, right? You can go to Polygon Primitives, and way down here you have this thing that says Interactive Creation. And I like this a little more because now, instead of just sort of bringing this object into the world here and then just typing in all my values and, you know, and doing that stuff, I think I would rather just, here, let's make sure that's on. So I'm going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, and I'm just checking this little checkbox on here. Now from here, what I can do is I can just drag on the, you know, on the surface here, drag this out like so, and then here I can just stretch this up like that, and, you know, there you go. That's my cube, and it's exactly the way I wanted, you know. So while I was creating this, I was also determining like the size and, you know, and the specifics of this. And then from here, if you decide like, well, you know, today I want to make this house. So this house, well, we'll get into that in just a second here, but like, you know, I wanted maybe another division in here so I can make the roof. I can click on the inputs here and decide, well, is it the, yeah, there you go, it's the width. So I'm going to highlight the, I'm going to click on the word Subdivisions width, and then with my middle mouse button, I'm going to click down. I'm going to press that middle mouse button, and you see how my cursor becomes a little arrow, and I can drag it to one side here, or I can drag it to the other side to reduce it here, and that gives me the ability here to add more divisions, and we're going to get into that in just a second. So why don't we start talking about, you know, the polygon. You know, this is a polygonal object here, and I have almost the most simple form of a polygonal object that you can have here. Now, the simplest form of a polygonal object that you'd have here is actually this here. So this is a polygon plane, and you can see this is pretty much as simple as it gets here. And in fact, almost even this is almost as simple as it gets here, because here this is essentially this is a polygon, just one polygon here. And what that means is like, well, let's think of a way to explain polygon is like a shape, right? And what's a shape? It's a well, a shape is like, you know, everybody understands what a shape is, but it's kind of like a contained form, maybe inside lines, and you know, and if you want to break it down, like, you know, in this case here we have a square. right? So that shape would be this form contained in that shape that's got these corners on it to it here, and those corners are kind of like points, right? And that's key right here. Those little points here are pretty much key. Everything that you see here with you know, in 3D modeling here. So well, you know, we got shapes here, and so if I right click, this is what I told you guys not to do last class here. You remember when we right clicked, you have this menu below, and then up above here we have these things. Last class we were mostly dealing with the object mode, so that means this, and I get to choose things like the position, the size, and in general the transform here of this object. So that means like where things are in space and how it's oriented, the size and stuff like that. That's all pretty common. I would say to pretty much any 3D application, they all have, you know, a way of representing here: position, orientation, and size here. So that means translate is position. This is the way it's pointed, orientation, and you know, the size. And you can see here by default, these things are usually sort of meant to have these things by default, but like a 0 translate position, a 0 rotation position. Then the default scale is always going to be 1 here. That's just the way they work here. And again, if you don't see that, that's going to be on the channel box. It's this little stack of papers here, or maybe diamonds. So, okay, so I have this, and let's check out, here I am in the object mode. So this is the thing, the model that we're building here. Let's do away with this here, because I think this is pretty straightforward here. This is probably going to be a little better. So the object mode lets us take this object and rotate it around. We can change its size, and you know, for those of you guys that didn't see the lecture last class here, the shortcuts I'm using here pretty much access these tools here. So I've got my move tool, my rotate tool, and my scale tool. And in addition, I have the selection tool, which is kind of like the harmless, the most harmless of the, well, I wouldn't call it really a transform tool, but it's very useful if you just want to select something and see its properties here, for example, or I don't know, or you just want to select something and not change it here. So this is all that does. Whereas like you can also select things with these objects here. I'm sorry, with these tools, the move tool, the rotation tool, and the scale tool. And in truth here, I don't ever actually come here anymore. I just use the shortcuts Q, W, E, and R, and that pretty much accesses the things that I was just talking about here. So if I press Q, right, that's just the selection tool, and I can select, you know, different things here. So in this case, all I have on my scene is the polycube. So if I press Q and just click on that, that's what I get selected here. W will get me the move tool. You can see that's highlighted here. So W for the move tool. And if I pull on any one of these axes here, I can position it in space. E is the rotation tool, and I can, you know, rotate it here based on these arrows on these rings here. And if I totally screw this up here, what I could do here is I could just come over here to these numbers, and I'm going to just highlight. In fact, I can just click and drag, and let's just take this, and I'm going to highlight all those numbers and just press type in 0. I'll hit enter, and that goes back to the way it, you know, the transform 0 position. Okay, so I don't want that right there. I'm going to drag this up. And let's deal with this over here. So what I want to show you guys here in terms of like how this thing is built is this. So here we're going to right click, and I have this little menu here. And this cube, right, this 3-dimensional cube here is actually made up of different things. So first, what we're currently looking at here is the object mode. So that means like I've made a little box here, and I can play around with it, and I can put it in different places by pulling, you know, manipulating the position or the orientation or the size or whatever. And that's all done here with the object mode. Next, we get to change the what you call the components, right? The components of an object here. And so the ones I'm going to be talking about today are the face, the edge, and the vertex here. So let's start with the face here. So as I was just talking about, you know, the three-dimensional object is made up of polygons, and polygons pretty much just like two-dimensional faces, right? Now, important thing here to think about here is, well, these two-dimensional faces, they're all about these corners. So I have two kinds of polygons that we use in 3D. Let me get this guy back here, because I want to show you this. So this is pretty much the most common and the most recommended of the faces that you're going to use. This is called a quad, right? It means it has 4 sides, and it's just easy to deal with here because you can divide it up into, you know, no matter how you you divide it up here, it's always going to be a quad. So this is a great advantage here for, you know, for working with all sorts of things, and we'll get to that later. But that's very easy to work with, and that's why it's so so popular to be working with the quad faces. You know, that's not the simplest it gets here. So you also have what you call tris, right? And if I just delete this little point, and I'll show you this in a second here. I can't possibly have a simpler shape than this. So this is as simple as it gets. So if I only had 2 points here, I would actually have a line, and that would be an edge here. So right here, you know, I have an example here of the face. I have an example of the lines that make that shape, and that would be the edge. And I have an example of the little points that make the lines, and that would be the vertex or the vertices, right, in the plural. So let's take it back to object mode, and I'm just going to delete this here. All right, so yeah, that's pretty much what a polygonal model is, sort of in a nutshell here. You know, it's made up of faces, right? Let's highlight these faces. And as I drag, I hover my mouse over it here, you see it'll highlight thing in red. Now I can choose, you know what? I can choose to select this just by clicking this here, right? And it becomes sort of highlighted a little bit orange here. Now, if I want to select another thing, a different object, I can hold down the Shift button, right? And you can see, I don't know if we talked about this in the last class, but multiple selections here. You can see you can hold down Shift, and it becomes a plus sign. So it means like, okay, so if you click on this guy here, then that's going to add to the selection, right? Now, you know, if I have something selected and I hold down the Shift button here, you know, as I hover over these things, it offers me these options, and I hope you can see the little cursor here. It's recognizing that this area here, it doesn't have a selection. So if I hold down Shift and hover over that top face here, it offers me the option of adding on to that selection. And you see the little plus menu, the little plus cursor on there, and I can just click that, and that will add that. Now with these 3 guys selected here, I'm going to hold down Shift and just get rid of some of these things in the selection here, and I can just subtract from the selection like that, right? So yeah, so that's the Shift is pretty. Let me put it this way: the Shift is kind of like your toggle selection. So if you don't have anything selected, you know, then it'll add to that selection. If you do have something selection, it'll subtract from that selection. So that's one way of selecting multiple things in here. Now you may have, let's do something a little bit more interesting here. I'm going to take this guy here, and let's divide up the subdivisions here. I'm going to add just a bunch of things just to complicate this a little bit and make it a little bit more complex, because this is a reason why you might want to work with multiple selections here. So here, if I hold down Shift and, you know, and I'm just dragging all this stuff here, you know, you might have a lot of things here, and you don't want to just click one by one. So what you might want to do here is you just want to specifically add to the selection. I can press Control Shift and then click. And so this, no matter what, it's only going to add to the selection by pressing Control, Shift, and clicking. I believe if you guys are on a Mac, that would be it would be Shift, maybe Command, either Command or Control. You'll have to check. I always forget. I don't have a Mac in front of me, so I always forget. But it's either Control or Command on a Mac, and that gives you this option here. See, Shift, Command or Control, and that specifically adds here. Now, if I do the another thing, if I just want to specifically just subtract here, here's another thing, guys, really quick. Let's say I wanted to add to the selection, and I only want to add to the selection. So if I held down Shift and dragged over this, that would get me all this stuff here. The problem with this is it selects the stuff on the back too. So I might want to do away with something like that. So if I wanted to, well, let's just go ahead and just keep adding here. So let's say if I wanted to add this, and I'm going to draw a big square over here, and I only want to add, I'm going to press Control, Shift, and click and drag, like so, and that gets me that. Now here, there's some parts here that I want to get rid of here. So I'm going to do the opposite of adding. I'm going to press Shift, Control, just Control and drag. And you can, when you just have Control, and I believe it's Command on a Mac. Again, try it out. I don't have the Mac in front of me here, so it's either Control or Command. And that gives you this other option of only deselecting the selection here. So if I draw a little marquee over that here, then that chops off that bottom segment of the selection here. So here, let's try that up over here with this. And now, if you see, my problem here was this. I have that roof here, which I don't want. So I might want to just get rid of all these little squares. I'm going to hold down Control, and you can see the little minus sign there. And that gets rid of all that stuff here. So that's kind of cool. Now, what I think I want to do here is I want to add some different things. I want to add some different things to this. I'm going to just take it back to normal here. And one thing I should probably explain, I haven't done anything fancy here. So I just took it back to its default state, and it let me do it without a lot of problems. I'll show you in a little bit what that means here. But if I had modified the appearance here, that would probably give me problems here. So what I have for you guys today is I have a little picture of a house that I'm going to be doing here. Let's just start making a basic house, and I just want to finish explaining like the basics of the polygons and things and the operations, and then we'll go from there and actually start building a model here. So just if we start thinking about like our most basic house, let's start this from scratch here. So here I'm going to go to Create, and you can go to Polygon Primitives, and then you can choose the shape that you want. In my case, I do want a cube, so I can pick that. I currently have interactive creation turned on, so that means either I draw on here, of course, or I can just draw on here. Well, that means that I can just determine a spot here on the grid that I want to draw, and I can just click this, drag this up here, and that's the base for my house here. Another thing that I do want to mention here that we'll through sort of repetition, you guys will pick this up here. But another thing that I kind of like here, these little magnets up here that you see, these are really handy sort of ways of snapping to things here. So let me create another base for our house here, and this time I'm going to press X. And when I do that, you see when I press X, it snaps to the grid. So that means it's going to try to start on any one of those little points here, and only those little points here. So I know it's like a sort of a perfect number here. And now I can just drag this up, and again, if I press X, I think, and it won't let me do it here. But yeah, if you start by pressing X, then it'll snap to the grid. So there you go. That's my house. All right, kind of a boring house for now, and I think for most people here, when we think about a house here, it usually has sort of a slanted roof here in most houses here. So there's a couple different ways that we can do that here. So I'm going to add a division here for, let's say, the width. And if I highlight this little word here and click the middle mouse button, you can see that my cursor becomes this little arrow, and I can add more or less divisions here to this. So with this, I think, you know, I can see this now. Like if I take this edge, move it up, that would give me the slanted roof that I'm looking for, right? So let's just try that here. So I'm going to right click here, and you know, of course, I can do some different things. Like if I select the face here, I can do that, and then just, you know, do something, move it up here, or I could even just rotate that. That would get me something similar too. However, when I do that, it rotates the whole polygon, and it kind of sort of brings this outer wall in. So I don't know if I want that here, but if all I wanted was a slanted roof, there's probably a better way to do that with either the edges or the vertices here. So let's try the edges here. So if I take this little line, or this is what this line is called an edge in 3D. I'm going to move it up with my move tool. So again, that's W, and I'm going to just drag that up here like that, and there we are. So that's beginning to look like a house, kind of. Sure, I guess we could call that a house. A different way. Let's go back a step here. A different way that we could work with this here is, you know, if we think about what is this line, right? A line, all a line is, it's a connection between 2 points, right? So if I instead of selecting the edge here, what if we tried the vertex here? And the vertex are these little points here. So again, you know, line is a connection between the points, and the vertex is those points here. It's one of those points. This is a vertex, this is a vertex, all these things here. So what I could do to achieve the same result is I could just draw a little marquee selection over those 2 points, move that up like so, and there you go. I got a slanted roof the same way, right? And I like this more than rotating the face, because it gets me, you know, it leaves this wall alone, you know, so we'll try that. Now, okay, another thing here, for now, I think this is kind of a boring house, you know, it looks a little bit like a simple house, or, you know, or something, but I don't know, I'd like to see windows and things on this here, so what can we do here? Well, maybe let's take this here. You know what? Yeah, let's just undo this here. I got a better way of making this house, and I'll just jump right to it here. So this time, I'm going to select. I didn't want to move this, so I just tapped Q on my keyboard to specifically to use the select tool. Because sometimes, you know, if you're not careful, I do this all the time, you know, and then you're doing this, and I accidentally slip, and that moves it around here. So sometimes, just to be on the safe side, I'll use the Q. Or the Q key is the selection tool, and that just specifically just selects those things. And just to reiterate what I just talked about in terms of selection here, I was just holding, I clicked on one of these faces, and I held down Shift to toggle select the face next to it here, right? So I've got these 2 faces that I wanted to work with here, and I'm going to bring that up here by extending them out here through a very common process called extrusion, right? And if you're up here on the polygon modeling here, you'll see this little icon here. It looks like there's I don't know, a cube growing out of a bunch of little squares around it here. That's the extrusion command here, and what the extrude does is basically this. So I've got this selection here of faces, and I'm going to grow another selection out of that here. So if I hit this, like so, that now exists. It exists right over the original here. It's just I'm not seeing it yet because it's just exactly in the same spot here. So the minute I start pulling this out here with the blue, the blue arrow here, I'm going to just bring that out like that. that extends this out here. Now I have something to work with here. And why, the reason I like this, yeah, I really do like that. Let's take this here, and I'm going to just do one more. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to take this guy here and make another extrusion. And then now, I'm simply going to modify this here really quick, just like that. So, okay, so the reason I like this so much is because this gives me, well, a little room to do sort of a beam here. So, you know, now I've got this nice separation here with extrusions here where I can make like a door or something if I want. I can make a window and things like that. You know, we don't have to, but we could. Let's make a door right here. So I'm going to take both of these guys here and using the same extrusion tool. Now, normally, whoops. And normally extrusions are meant to just bring things out like this or in to the object here. And look at this here, just while I'm mentioning this here, when I pushed it in, you see all of a sudden I get these flickering sort of black faces here. What's happening there is I've actually got two faces that are occupying the same space. So we'll talk about this in more depth later when we talk about you know, normals and back faces. The idea here is like the polygons have you know, the polygons have a sort of a facing that, you know, where they're looking at. You know, they're meant to look a certain way. So in this case here, being flat, it's probably looking out this way. That's the normal direction. If I were to sort of go behind this this box here, I don't really have a way of seeing that, so it's colored black in the 3D here. So we'll get to that a little bit later, but just for now, I want to show you something else that you can do with the extrusions here. So what I did here is I selected this little face, these two little faces here, and I pressed extrude, and that's why I'm getting this menu. And most importantly, you guys, I'm going to get this this menu here that says Polygon Extrude face here. From here, of course, if you manipulate the thickness or the translate Z, that kind of works the same. The offset is kind of interesting because it gives you sort of a very neat sort of outline for that. And because this is flat, just because it's flat, I can, and pointing in this direction, I can just bypass this. Well, I could bypass it just by pressing R, but I've got these nice little things that sort of scale along the face's orientation here. So I could just scale this to the size that I need here, like so. And then maybe just position that door somewhere over here. Drag that down here, so we've got ourselves a little door. Okay, yeah, that kind of works. What if we wanted windows though? So let's dig this guy in a little bit. So I'm going to push this in here by just going in here a little bit, and let's press that one more time here. And it's very important when you guys press this, you guys, it's very important that you remember that you did that because it already exists. So the thing I most see when people are starting out is like, oh, but why do I have these flickering faces? Well, that's usually because you tried to extrude something and then you forgot that you pressed it, and you know, you get these faces. And I do that myself sometimes too. Like, you know, you might forget and things. But you know, you want to try to remember when you make an extrusion, that face already exists. Even if you didn't do anything with that face, it's already just like sitting right on top of the original face that you extruded that from here. So here I'm making this little outline for a door. Then here I can press this again. Let's bring that out, and there we go. We got ourselves a little door. You know what? Just yes. Let me see.
Really quick. So every time you want to move the door, for example, do you
Uh-huh.
have to press that icon, or can you just move it whenever you want?
Um,
Like the
I'm not.
extrusion one.
Yeah, this is. I'm not just from how you worded the question. I'm not exactly sure, like what you mean by moving the door, but just to show. Because I mean, this isn't. This is really just part of this box, really. So if I want to move this door here, I could, I could just click those faces and
Oh,
drag
okay,
them
okay. No, I
down.
thought you had to like click on the icon every time you wanted to
No, oh
maybe.
no, no, no. Yeah, that's a great question. That's what I thought you were saying. And no, that's specifically if you if you have something there, then that's done. This is more or less the shape of the door. I'm just not satisfied with the position, so I could just change the position here somewhere and modify that. In fact, and I think I may have done some of that. Oh, that's right. Okay. So I see I've got this little division here, and now I'm just growing this little door out of there. So that would be how I manipulate that. Now, for say like a doorknob here, you can see one thing I'm sort of getting to here is you see I'm trying to build my entire house out of this one shape, and that can be done. And it's usually good. It's really good to get used to this here. But for certain other things, like in this for this house here, I'm going to draw like a doorknob here. Let's do this out of something like this, right? And this guy has a lot of sides to him. You can see I've got 20 divisions here on this, so I could keep that. Or what I could do here is I could reduce that to something else. Like let's say, you see the smallest it can get here is 3, to have like to actually be a 3-dimensional shape here. So I'm going to just bump that up here to say, at least 8, but I'm going to go with 16 or something. And I like these, this random number of 16. It's not random. It's because it's usually divisible by 4. So I don't know. I kind of like those things here where, it's just sort of easy to think about here. It's not that I'm really sort of thinking about all these numbers and stuff as a model, but, if I'm dealing with nothing, I think I would, and just starting out, I would rather have something like that to begin with here. So, okay. With, because I just created this here, I do have the option of modifying. I just changed the subdivisions on the axis. I can also add a subdivision on the height here. So if I bump that up here, I can now see this is this side of that doorknob, and maybe in here that sort of pinches in or something. You know what? I bet I could pull this off with 2. Let's do this here. So here we go. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to face, and I'm just going to just draw a big old selection over this here. And I'm pretty sure I may have missed. Oh, actually that didn't. That was pretty neat. Okay, so I thought I might have missed some things here and just selected some back faces there, but I guess that's fine. I bet if I do it here, that'll get some here. So let's tilt it in this arrow here. I'm just going to select like that, and that looks fine from here. But I bet, yeah, there you go. You see, as I turn this around here, you see I didn't mean to get those faces. So what I can do here is just sort of like look at it from this certain angle here. And let me do a trick here. I talked about this a lot in the last class here. You know how when we press 6 to see our textures, the textures come on. You also have the 5 key, which makes it solid to look like solid shading to look like this. And then you also have the 4 key to see the wireframe. I'm sorry, just the wireframe mode. And that's like a sort of an X-ray version of the shading, and you can just see through like the construction of your object. So that gives us this, and that sometimes when it makes it a little less annoying because I'm seeing through this house. My vision isn't blocked by the house. So I'm just saying it's there. Yeah, there you go. Let's zoom in a little bit. There you go. So knowing this here, I could just press Control. I can right click and just deselect. Sorry, not right click. Excuse me. I can press Control and just regular click and deselect all these these faces here. So that was actually really, really easy, right? So let's try that again here. Just to show you here, like if I'm interested here in selecting this, you know, and let's say I was a little sloppy and for some reason, you know, and this happens to a lot of us here, for some reason, I may have just done something like this, and then I turn this around and there are these spaces here that I don't want. Well, that's no big deal. I'm just going to position it some way like this. I'll hold down Control this time, and you can see my little cursor becomes a minus sign. I'm going to deselect the faces here, and because it selects back faces as well, you know, if I just try to select over this strip of polygons here, then I'm pretty much good to go here. Now with this, I'm going to extrude this. I'm going to, you know, when we talk about extrusions, it either pushes something out of the original shape, or you can use it to push it in, which is what I'm going to do in this case here. So yeah, extrusions here. I'm going to press this button, and you get these little blue lines. Now when I pull this out, it comes out of the shape like that, which is, you know, kind of interesting here. In my case, well, I guess I could do that too. It's just sort of the other way that I didn't really intend. But I could do this in here too. And that brings it in like this. It kind of pinches that bottom part in a little bit like that, you know, which I don't know that I like. So let's fix that. I'm going to take the vertex here, get that little guy right there. Let's just pull that down here like so. I could just select these bunch of vertices here. I'm going to hold, just tap R for scale. We could do that and scale that in here. And that's my, whoops, and that's my doorknob right there. Yeah, and I could just put this somewhere over here. And I do want to show you something just to sort of reiterate something I talked about in the last class. You see how I'm moving this, and it's got the arrows sort of pointing to its orientation here, which I really like as it, you know, as an animator and things. I think it's really important to know where things are pointed and things. So here, if I click this little hammer next to the channel box, you have the tool settings, right? In my case here, I'm dealing with the rotation tool, which can be accessed by tapping E on your keyboard. Again, Q, W, E, and R are my shortcuts, and E will get me to the rotation tool here. And so, yeah, so I'm going to rotate this around here, and I can do my very best to try to get things into place here. And you can see I can verify all that stuff here with the numbers. So I got pretty close here. It says minus 91. So I think what I meant to do is just do minus 90. And then the rest here, I can just sort of enter in zeros on here. And now I know it's more or less right. Now, another thing that you can do with the tool settings. So in this case here, you see, let's say I rotated it to this position here. And now, for example, my move tool here, it's going to move it forward on its own axis here on Z, you know, so here, you know, I'm just pulling its own little arrows here, and it's moving along its own axis. Now, what if you wanted to move it according to the world orientation? Well, I'm going to click the little hammer. That brings up the tool settings, and here, one of the things that you guys can see here is the axis orientation, which instead of being oriented to the object, I could have it oriented to the world. Now, just like I was saying, it doesn't care where this thing is pointed. It's just going to move it along the world's orientation here. So, you know, that's another way to deal with that. And you have that for each tool. So here you can see I've jumped back to the move tool. I'm sorry, to the rotation tool. And if I tap W, it doesn't care. It's just going to, you know, I get to position that wherever I want in space here. So let's take that back here, and I'm just going to fix this up again. Press 0. Yeah, minus 90. And I'm going to just bring this back here like that. Let's just put that right, I guess right here, right? I don't know. I've seen doors either way. Oh, here's another shortcut for you. So what I meant to do here is to zoom into that little thing here, and I don't want to do a lot of work with the navigation by pressing Alt and middle mouse button and zooming and stuff like that. So one little trick that I like to do sometimes is you can press, if you have this thing selected and I just want to zoom in to see the specifics of it here, I can hit F frame on my keyboard, F for frame or focus or whatever you want to call it. And if I tap that, it just centers the screen around that selection here. And now I can zoom out a little bit and position it where I want on my door. I don't know. I kind of like that here. Sort of a neat little shortcut to to position those things here. So I've got this house that I'm beginning to model here. What about a window here? So let's try that just again to sort of repeat some of these steps here. Let's try making a window. Now I could make a window here with this. So let's take this here, and I'm going to just hit the extrude button. And so just to sort of reiterate some of the things we were talking about, somebody was asking me about like, well, what do I do to move it here? Well, you move this thing, but it already exists. It's very important that you guys understand this here. So, this, if I don't have anything here, I haven't done anything to this. I didn't extrude it out. So you see, if there's a big difference between pulling this and then, when I press this new face already exists. So now if I were to move this around here, it's a separate thing. So it's very different than just pulling. That's why you make extrusions here. So I'm going to just bring this in here. We've got ourselves a little window here. I'm going to dig that in to the shape here, like this maybe, and we'll call that a window here. So what about on this side here? Maybe on this side here, let's say I want two windows. So this, I'm not really going to be able to get this with just one of these shapes here, because that's just going to give me one window. Well, maybe I could, but I think I have a better way of doing that here. And what I'm going to do with this one here is I'm going to use this tool here, which is called the multi-cut tool. The multi-cut tool, what it's usually used for, or what's designed to be used for, is you can you can just sort of do little things like this, and then I'll put that little vertex right there, and then just press enter. Whoops, did that give me what I want? Yeah, I guess that path was a little complex here. Let's see if we got that. Yeah, that path was a little complex here, but I could make something like this, and I'll press enter. Did that not do it? No. All right, what about here? Yeah, this will do it for sure. I'll press enter here, and there you go. So I've made a little cut here, and that gets me a sort of a customized shape, and I could do something special here, like maybe like that, just connect these dots here, and that gets me a way of cutting up this polygon with a multi-cut tool. So the way this usually works here is I can drop a little point in here. Usually it wants to work again with quads or tris. That's sort of the basic principle here behind everything you're going to model, and this this is going to make more sense later on. So here, let's see what we got here. Yeah, let's just press enter, and that cuts that. Now I've got a five-sided polygon here, which is what you call sometimes what you call an n-gon, and that's usually not very recommended when you're modeling for polygons. And I didn't like this, and that is probably because, oh yeah, and that's we'll get to that later, but that's probably because I've broken up some of those nice four-sided polygons that I was working with here. So I'm not getting the benefits that it gives me here. Get away with this. There we go. And then what about this? Yeah, so I kind of messed it up here. Let's do this. Let me start from scratch here. Come on, just start from scratch. All right, let's try this out again. And I'm going to do just a quick little house here. So I'm drawing a square. with the this, and you see it's colored black. It's asking me to set up the height. I can just drag this out here. This time, instead of entering in the divisions here with the height things, I think I'm going to use the multi-cut tool to do this one here. So that was, yeah, I can get the same result here using the multi-cut tool. And I want to show you guys something here regarding, you know, the quads, the quad polygons that I was just talking about. Well, the reason we use these is they give us this really, really nice way of working with, you know, with the polygon here. So if I, you know, aside from cutting this up like so, what I could actually do here is I could hit the control key, and this gives me this nice thing here, sort of going all the way around this polygon here. This is what you call a loop, right? And a loop, let me show you what a loop is. So here, let's give this guy, yeah, let's give this guy some more divisions here, and maybe some more divisions in here. So here's a loop, guys. If I go to edge, and let's say I select this edge here, if I double click, because these things are all four-sided polygons here, it's able to sort of identify a pattern, right? And that line that goes all the way across this thing here, that's what you call a loop, right? This is also a loop going this way here, and that's because, you know, that's because it can identify a bunch of four-sided polygons that it could complete a circuit here, doing this here, right? If I right-click, yeah, that's pretty much a sort of a loop there. Another concept you have here is a ring, right? A ring is different here. So the loops go this way, and loops are really nice because you can just double-click a line or something like that. I'm sorry, an edge or something like that. It makes this circuit all the way around that here. I'll show you a shortcut. I'll just show you it now. We can reiterate on this later here. But if I hold down Control, right-click, you have this yet this other menu, and you know we'll touch on this later. So Control, right-click, and you have this thing here. This is Edge Loop, and then you can select the edge loop that way, right? Here, let's take this guy here. I'm going to do something else. This is a very similar concept here called an edge ring. So again, Control, right-click, and I'm going to go to Edge Ring, and that gets me this thing. The difference here is one is like just a series of connected lines all the way around the object. The other one, the ring, is kind of interesting because I have a series of parallel lines all the way around the object here. So this is kind of cool because there's some different things that we can do with this here. So let's say we wanted to build that house here, but here I changed my mind. I don't need I don't need this extra bunch of lines here. I just need a sort of a straight cut down the middle here, and I'm going to build my slanted roof. So I need to make all these lines here. I need to what you call collapse them into one point. So here, the collapse command is this little guy here. It looks like an X. Is that right? Yeah, that's the collapse here. I'm sorry, it's a scale tool. But this is the collapse. And if you do this, that's what the collapse does. So just to show you like specifically what it does, one thing at a time here. If I collapse this this edge, then it goes to the center here. If I were to collapse, oh boy, am I out of undos for some reason? There we are. All right, so here, if I were to collapse this polygon here, for example, then it collapses all of those points into a single point. So that's essentially what the collapse command does. So again, if I just want to do away with that whole thing here, I can press Control, right-click. This time, instead of going to Edge Loop, I'm going to go to Edge Ring, and I can do this. And the better option here, you can see now that I understand what the collapse command does, is I can also just point it. You see, there's an option here. Select the edge ring and then collapse it here. So I'm just going to do this, and that does all that stuff at a time here. And that did that nice and clean. I'm going to do this. This is also an edge ring here, all the way around here. So I'm going to repeat that command here. And here's a nice little shortcut for you guys. So I could just right-click and press Control, right-click, and then just do this the way I did. But because this was the last thing I did, and I'm just going to be using this command here for a while to clean up my geometry. When I say geometry, I mean like the shape and the sort of the arrangement of the lines and the structure of this shape. So I'm going to be doing this for a while, and instead of going to that little menu here by pressing Control, right-click, and doing all that stuff here, it's in Maya's memory. So that's the last thing I did. So here's a little shortcut for you guys. I can just press G, right? That repeats. I don't know why it's G. But you know, that just repeats the last action that I just did here. Why does it not want to do this one here? Okay, so let's try that. G, there you go. And then here, I guess, you know, I want to keep this one here. So I want this line here. So here's another thing here I can do to quickly just select that loop here. Very, very easily, I can just select that line and just double click it. That gets me the loop here. Another way that you have of selecting the loop is if I have, let's say I'm in faces mode here, I can select this, and then maybe just shift select this, and if I just click, that would give me just that regular selection. Now here's a little shortcut for you guys too. If I select this first guy, and then I'm going to hold down shift, and instead of clicking, I'm just going to quickly double click, and it recognizes that this arrangement of quad polygons, it makes a loop. So it does that, and that gets me, that's kind of cool actually. You know, I could take advantage of that here for this. What about here? I think, you know what? I think for this house this time, I'm going to do a little sort of a porch or something. I'm going to hold down shift, double click this. That gets me the ability to, you know, get that stuff there. I'm going to just extrude this out little ways here, and you see you've got this sort of this hexagonal sort of thing here, which is kind of ugly. Let's do this. I'm going to take these this front part of the porch here. I'm going to fix that just by selecting polygons, and I know it's pointed out in that direction. So if I use my scale tool, I can just sort of scale it down to 0. So it's got 0 dimension on the x-axis, and we'll do the same with this axis here. There you go. And that looks pretty good to me as far as a porch, maybe. Put that in here. Let's get a roof out of this thing here. So this time, I just bring that a little bit together here, because I think I might want, oh, I don't know. I might want like, yeah, you know what? Here, I know what I want. Let's take this and just bring that up. And from here, of course, I could put, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to go with such a symmetrical design for now. I'm going to put a little door in here today. And let's just do something like this. Bring that in here. And that gets me that little door. We could start putting, I'm going to put a window in here just to make it a little different. Let's bring that here, here. That looks like a nice window here. And then maybe in here, we'll tell you what, let's just mark out the spots here for the windows, because I want them all to be sort of identical. So this time here, I'm going to put a loop so I can get 2 windows here. So with this, I'm going to press Control and just put a loop right down the center here. So that divides these polygons into 2, and I've got them symmetrical on both sides. That's why I did the loop here. I'm not too crazy about this stuff here, but we can do away with it here. So I'm going to take this and this and this and this. So I'm shift selecting everything here. Now, if I were to extrude and I want to make that smaller here, you see, well, here's the problem. When I did that, it treated that whole selection as 1. So I want to show you a different thing here. Let's say we have this, and this time, let's see if I've got it. Yeah, so I've got those things here, and I want to extrude them in, but like only the face itself. So I'm going to press the little extrude button here. That's either this, or you know what? You guys can press Command or Control G. I'm sorry, Control E for extrude, or if you're on a Mac, I believe it's Command E. Again, I'm sorry, I always forget, but it's either Maya's a little weird on the Mac because it actually respects some of the shortcuts, and so Control really is Control in some instances for the Mac. So you're gonna have to try that out because I'm not sure right off the top of my head. But yeah, Control E on a PC will get you the extrusion tool, and that does this. Now, you know, the minute I press this here, those faces, they now exist. And if I were to pull these out here, they do what they normally do, which is to just come out of the shape where it was. I want to show you guys a new sort of thing here, a new feature here. You'll see I can get a lot of stuff out of this. I can use the offset to get that window here. Now here's something here. You know, divisions also gets you sort of like, as I extrude it in, you can divide this even more. Now another thing that you have here is the keep faces together feature that currently it's turned on, okay? Now, if I turn this off, this is the difference here. So it's treated each of these things as a separate area. That's the difference here. So, you know, just to show you here, now I can actually get, you know, treat each of these faces sort of individually here. And now I've got like separate windows here. There you go, like this. And then maybe with these now, we can just, let's turn that back on. Oh, all right, so in here now, let's just do another one here, and I'm gonna have all these things sort of sink in to the house at sort of a specified amount, like that. That looks pretty good to me. We can build this this door. I can probably, yeah, let's do this. Let's bring it, let's make a little frame like that, just so it comes out just a little bit. And then I'm gonna bring that in a little bit here, like so. And I don't know if we want this, whatever, we'll just push it in. And I can build another doorknob or something. Oh, I don't know, just to get a little fancy with this here. There we go. It's a pretty fancy door. And what was I gonna do? Oh, right. Yeah, let's do the roof here, for example. So with the roof, I'm gonna take, let's do this. I'm gonna take this. Here's another shortcut for you. Let's say I want this strip of polygons from here to here. And because these are quads and that could be a loop, I'm gonna just go all the way to the end of this selection here. I'm gonna hold down Shift, and you see the little plus sign. I can now just double click this, and it does that selection. I don't know why it selected this, but oh, right, because it's a quad. Okay, so I'm gonna just press down Control, and just click the ones I don't want. I do want this stuff here, so I'm gonna just do this again. Shift select this, and then just deselect that. So that gets me a nice sort of selection here for my roof. I'm gonna extrude this out. Let's bring it out a little ways like that. That gets me a little bit of a roof here. Oh yeah, I guess I did want that. Oh, whatever, that's fine. Let's keep this like this. And you know what, just to make things interesting, let's give this a little gutter or something here. And I'm going to bypass the extrusion settings and just sort of, you know, have it be like that. And I don't know, what can we do here? Can we just push that in maybe? I guess we could. Let's do this. And this time I'm going to work with the offset here again. This time I'm going to, it's a little hard to manipulate in such a sort of a small value like this. So I'm going to just type it in. I'm going to say 0.025. Let's hit tab to see what that gets me. And that gets me that nice little outline like this, which I kind of do like. Yeah, I guess I like that. And then here, I'm going to just push that in a little ways here. Pinch that down. That gets me a little bit of a gutter in there. And maybe, yeah, let's try this here. I'm going to just put in another loop right here because those are all quads. Let me show you guys something here. I bet that if we took our tool settings here, because this thing is symmetrical, mostly symmetrical, with the multi-cut tool, let's go back to W, to move tool. I bet that we could get, here, the symmetry settings, let's turn this on, object X, and let's try this here. Yeah, there we go. No, that's not gonna work. All right, let's just do this here. So here, let's just try this here. I'm gonna do this right there, and another one right here. And we can probably just pinch this down here by taking the vertices, or better yet, let's just take the edges here, this, and this, and we can just pull that in. You guys don't have to do gutters and stuff. I'm just sort of having some fun with this here. But yeah, mostly, oh yeah, and then finally, let's do one last thing here. I'm gonna bring these guys, out. And I bet I could just go straight across the loop here by pressing this and just double clicking that, almost. Yeah, there we go, that's what I want. And then here, if I just extrude out of the shape here, like so, there we go. We got a nice, yeah, a nice sort of little ledge here on the roof that's sort of overlooking that, and that's mostly the house here. Now, you know, just to finish this here, I guess, you know, if I were doing this more in detail here, I don't have to necessarily do all this stuff here just out of one block, but I want you guys to sort of, you know, when you're starting out, I want you guys to get the hang of just sort of making this shape out of one thing here, you know. So I got this entire block, this entire house out of that one cube here. And, you know, it's important in the beginning to just really get the hang out of, you know, modifying the shapes that you have. Of course, you know, from here, of course, I can go and make, you know, some window frames here. Let's take this here, for example. And then here, you know, of course, I could just go in here and do that stuff here. But, you know, in the beginning, I really do want to have a little bit more control of the modeling, because you're not going to be able to make all your shapes out of boxes here. You know, so for here, for example, let's take the face by right-clicking on this here. Whoops. Do this. I'm going to right-click on this and just extrude this out this way here, and we got ourselves a little sort of window frame, if you will. I mean, you know, of course, I could have maybe made that out of like 2 cubes here. I just chose to do it here with this for now, but there you go. Those are some examples of some of the common operations for polygonal modeling in Maya. And you know, this is a very, very basic little example here, but it goes to show you here, you know, how you might be, you know, some of the techniques you might want to use to create, you know, to create a house. So here, let's do this doorknob again, and I'm going to do this a different way this time here. This time, I'm just going to pinch that down to, oh, let's do 12 this time. And this time, I'm going to extrude this part out of here so I can, let's keep that stem or whatever you want to call it, the stem of the handle or the base of the handle. Let's keep that straight. And then here I'm going to just hold down Control, drag over this here, and I'm going to bring this out here like so. Check this out. Oh yeah, there's one more command I didn't show you guys yet that I want to here. So let's take this. I'm going to bring this out a ways here, extrude that out here. It's nice and even. Let's take the loop here. So I'm going to just double click that. I'm going to bring this down here by W. All my shortcuts are beginning to go. I don't know what it is here with this this computer, but so it's kind of asking me to reset, but luckily I've kind of covered most of what I need to here. Anyway, this is my doorknob here, and yeah, I like the shape. And just one more thing I want to show you guys, I can get this to be a little bit rounder here by using the Bevel command. And what the Bevel does is, you know, it's like opposite of the collapse, where the collapse, I guess it sort of makes everything sort of one point. This is going to take a line, and as long as it, you know, it sees quads in that pattern here, then it's going to split that line in two. So here's, for example, here, let's just bevel this right now here. If I do this, see, there you go, and it brings up this little menu here for like the fraction that you want, and then let's bring that, make that a little bit bigger here. That looks good. And then the segments here, in this case here, I might want to give it a little bit more here. And you know, just the basic principle of 3D here is like, in order to get a curved line, then you're going to need more divisions here. So to describe more like a curve, then I need these little middle points between, well, between those points here, and it's going to make it sort of a nicer shape here. So that's why I might want to put in more or less segments here. The flip side to putting in segments here is like it could impact the performance of a model. So say you're building something for a game or something where you want the model to perform a little faster, to be rendered a little faster. So then you might not want to load up your model full of polygons, especially when those polygons don't really do anything to describe the shape. So here, just to top this off, before my computer totally gives up on me, I'm going to just put this over here, and there we are. And I can press F for frame, and that brings me a little closer to that object here. Let's put this thing here. Here's another trick that I like in my modeling here. It's not all that important for what we're doing here today, but up here on the viewport, you'll see I have this little option here that gives us the wireframe. So again, the wireframe is this. When I press 4, it lets me see, you know, the construction of the model. But I do like to see it shaded, but I can get a sort of a hybrid here with this little option here. That's the wireframe unshaded. So if I do this, I can now see the construction lines on my model, and it's you know, a solid shading here. That's also available here under shading, and you can see here I've got this little thing checked on, wireframe unshaded. All that is just, you know, just me pressing this little box on and off here, and that way I can see, you know, where I want this to be over here. Position this over here. We can pinch that down by pressing R. Scale that down here, and I'm going to adjust it there. And you know, of course, like if I really wanted to get fancy here, I could. You know, let's get fancy. So I'll just do this here. Let's build a little keyframe here. You know what? Let's do something here, just for the sake of getting fancy. Let's try something here. Let's do this. And you guys, I'm kind of making this up as I go along here, but with these techniques that I was showing you here, it's really, really useful because there's a lot of things that you guys can do here with just, you know, not a whole lot of effort here. So for example, here, got this guy here. Yeah, there we go. Let's put in, let's put in something right there. Then here, I'm going to just neaten up this this thing. Come on, Maya. All right, fine. Be fussy. All right, there you go. So here, let's bring this here, And yeah, I want a little keyhole in here. And what I'm thinking here is I bet we can make this little guy bigger. Let's make it a little bigger. Like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to need another division. So let's just, here we go. Let's double click that line and I'm going to bevel this guy here. You know, again, you guys, this is just extra here. You know, I'm just sort of making this up as I go. Let's take this, and now I can just, because I put in an extra line here to hold its place, this is important. Let me explain my thought process here. So I want to make this sort of a bigger opening here. So I need this to be bigger than the bottom half. So I put a line, but that one line isn't going to do the trick because otherwise this is going to be more of a sort of trapezoid shape. So I need another line there to hold it in place here. So we're getting that sort of thing here. So that's my trapezoid thingy here. And yeah, I'm mostly happy with that. Let's take this and position this little outline to where I need it right there. What else? You know what? I'm missing a line straight down the middle here. Now, I could do that, of course, with the multi-cut tool. If I press Control and just try to do that right there, I could get that. A different way that I like to do this here, because I'm dealing with a symmetrical object. Come on, Maya. There we go. No, excuse me. There we are. So because I'm dealing with a sort of an object that's mostly symmetrical here, another thing that I like to do is I like this little command here that has the mirror geometry here. Now this is what if I do this, that's going to, well, that's going to mirror it right there. So you can see in this direction, it's facing the x-axis, meaning, you know, if you don't know what this means here, which is fine, like I just sort of missed the direction here, and we make those mistakes. But this is the x-axis. You can just redirect it here so it does it on, and the one I'm looking for is the z-axis. So I'm going to point it here to z. And yeah, actually that's exactly what I wanted here. And you can go either positive or negative here. So depending on how you want that object to be shaped, you know, you can make this this mirror, and that's this little guy right here. That's the mirror tool here. And this little box is going to come up, and that's really what this thing is mostly about. You can get a lot of use out of this sort of thing here. So what I'm going to do with this, let's take this guy. I'm going to try to make that a little bigger here. There we go. And then I'm going to take this, pull that down, and then here, I'm using just my selection tool so I don't push this in. Now I'm going to extrude it in. And let's see what we get. I'm going to rotate this here, and let's correct that value. You see, you know, I did the best I could to get it, and that's actually pretty good for, you know, for a human, for me. So minus 90.084 or something. So I'm just going to just correct that value here. So I'll just type in just a straight minus 90, hit enter, and yeah, there we go. So I'll press F to frame that right there, and let's put that little little thingy here. Is that right? Yeah, I don't need to be perfect here, but we get the point here. That's that. It's a pretty big, whatever you call it, a big doorknob here for that. But anyway, that gives you sort of a little taste of some of the operations here in for polygonal modeling in Maya. So yeah, so I guess that's just sort of an overview, and I'm going to stop that video here, and we'll continue with some other videos.